We'll do Chris Him from Arizona, who wanted to bring up, they say, the miracle of the sun in Portugal in 1917. I think that's commonly known as the miracle of Fatima. If you think it's a good argument against or for Catholicism / I assume Christianity as a whole, to educate our listeners, and Chris, you can, and Justin can confirm this. This is when 70,000 people claimed to have seen the sun change different colors and zigzag on the sky and do stuff that if it actually happened, everybody would have been thrown off planet Earth due to physics. But is that my understanding, Chris?
That's the one.
All right. Your call, Chris. Tell Justin what you want to talk about, because I'm sure Justin wants to talk about it.
Yeah, Justin, I follow you quite a bit. This is Piranha. The tarantulas are still coming for you. Anyway, with I hear, like, I listen to a lot of the deconstruction stuff, and I never hear the miracle of the sun come up from either side. And I would think I would hear it as an argument from one side or the other. And I'm sure you can, I'm sure it happens, and maybe I just haven't seen it. But I was just kind of curious your thoughts on that.
So typically only Catholics bring up the apparitions because it's more in line with what Catholic theology teaches. Usually it has something involving Mary, and like Orthodox Protestants don't really care about Mary. But that being said, I learned about the apparitions growing up in Catholic school. And even when I learned about them in Catholic school, we got to do some deep dive investigations, and we learned that there's still kind of a matter of faith. There were people that agreed with what they heard, and there were people who disagreed. So even like the dancing of the sun at Fatima, there were newspaper and documentaries made at that time interviewing people. We've got lots of interviews with people that said, yeah, I went, I didn't see anything. It didn't happen, right? And so the reality is you've got to... What's that?
Sorry, I've seen some of that, yes.
Yeah. So you've got a huge group of people, some of them claiming I didn't say anything. Some of them said I stared at the sun and it started moving around, which you would expect if you were staring at the sun like that. You're not supposed to be, that's not going to, your eyes are not going to be seeing straight. And then we've got other things too, like if you zoom out and look at the big picture, right? Supposedly, like, the goal of these apparitions are to probably bring people into the faith, bring people into the fold, but they almost exclusively only happen to people who already believe. Like the Marian apparitions and whatnot almost exclusively happen to solely Catholic communities. The same way past life regressions almost universally only happen in Hindu culture. So people are willing to believe these religious phenomenon because they already work into their held religious framework. That's why it doesn't happen. That's why, like, there's never been a religious apparition at like an atheist gathering. That's why you don't hear about atheists getting possessed by demons, is because it's just not part of our brain. Doesn't include that typically as a possibility, right? But if your brain already thinks that it's a possibility, it's likely to hallucinate it. One of my favorite like mass panics to compare this to is the dancing plague in the 16th century in France. Nearly 100, 200 people danced themselves into exhaustion in days, for days, dancing in the streets, believing that the Holy Spirit, God, was compelling them to get out of their houses and dance. There's even reports that some people died in the dancing plague. They're not entirely confirmed whether or not people actually died. But the reality is, like, these mass hallucinations, they happen all the time. And the last thing I'll say, sorry, this is long-winded, the last thing I'll say is, it's silly to me that a god would use some weird distraction like having a visual dancing sun, not a real dancing sun. The sun certainly couldn't be dancing in the sky. Shit would happen that everybody on the planet would see it. So it's obviously just a visual apparition. But why would he go through all that trouble and then say fuck all about the 3 million children that are dying of starvation right now? Why is he giving a couple people in the Fatima apparition this visual experience, but then he's allowing all kinds of horrors to unfold? 200,000 people dying in Haitian earthquakes. The math doesn't really math for me.
Yeah, well said. I mean, honestly, I'd say the biggest miracle with the whole Fatima thing is the fact that 70,000 people got together on the word of 3 shepherd children. But, I mean, it really surprises me that I don't hear it come up more as like, trying to think of the best way to put this. Like when people talk about the supposed witnesses of Jesus, that people don't bring up that 70,000 people supposedly saw the sun dancing in the sky. Like I would just think it'd be a more common talking point. So I was just kind of curious what you guys think about that.
It's coincidence you called with our earlier caller who was talking about the more people who claim to have observed or witnessed a thing, the more likely that thing is true. I literally, the reason I remembered it was 70,000 people is I sat there and Googled the miracle of Fatima to try to remember the number, because I was going to bring it up with him as an example of, okay, so 70,000 people claim to have seen the sun dance, that if it actually was happening, either the sun was moving and everybody on the planet would have seen it, or the earth was moving and we would all been thrown into space. Which one was it? But I didn't. So it's a very common point that I bring up as well. So I'm right with you on the, hey, I think people don't bring it up because it's so obviously false that at best, we could say God interfered with 70,000 people's brains, according to the press. And we have all the problems of translations, transcription, chain of custody of the testimony, all of that stuff that we don't know the exact number. But God messed with people's brains to make them believe the sun was dancing around. And then we're back into Justin's point, which is, and 10,000 people, 10,000 children are starving to death on this planet every single day. So
sure,
why?
I mean, you'd think he's got bigger fish to fry, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah,
right,
to quote Tim Minchin, so God took a break out of giving babies malaria to pop down to your local area and cure your cataracts. That's what the argument is. Like, that's what we're doing. So no, I don't think that that I give much weight to it. And I also note that this was 1917. And since we've had a proliferation of cameras, we've seen miracles die off in a correlative level. So I know correlation doesn't imply causation, but that's an interesting data point that we don't see this stuff anymore. And when we do, our first thought is, wow, how did the AI do that? Or that's interesting special effects. And inevitably we're right.
Yeah, definitely. I think honestly, I'm more surprised it doesn't come from Catholics more often, being that it happened supposedly in 1917, it being so recent. I would think, because one of the big things that people point out is that, oh, well, all the miracles seem to have dried up after about the time of the New Testament. But, it's just something I've kind of wondered about, and I was curious what you guys thought. Appreciate you guys having me on.
It's a fair question. Thanks for
thank you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I'm reminded of there's a comedian back in the 70s and 80s called Father Guido Sarducci. His bit was, he was this New York Italian father, a priest. He wore the getup and everything. And one of his jokes was about the church declaring things miracles, which they did. The Pope declared this a miracle in the 30s and reaffirmed it in the 40s or something like that. So this is an official miracle according to the church. He's like, yeah, they're trying to canonize this person, and to be a saint, you have to prove 3 miracles, and I hear only 2 of them can be card tricks. And so that's kind of what we're dealing with here.
I mean, to be fair, we've got crazier stuff the church would validate, like having the holy prepuce of Jesus, the foreskin. I mean, their system of validation is pretty thin.
Yeah, let's send an investigator who better well find a very good reason not to call it a miracle, right? Yeah.